Master is woe to the Pharisees. Woe to the Pharisees. Look at Matthew 23, verse 1 through 39. And also this same account is in Mark 12, 38 through 40, and Luke 20, 45 through 47. Mark and Luke's version is very highly concentrated. It's just 3 verses in each, so we'll just look over at Matthew's version, which is an entire chapter, and I think we'll go through it a little bit at a time. Let's start off, I think, reading, let's go from 1 down to 12.
Matthew 23 and 1. Then Yeshua spoke to the crowds and to his taught ones, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit on the seat of Moshe. Therefore, whatever they say to you to guard and do. But do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. For they bind heavy burdens, hard to bear. They lay them on men's shoulders, but with their finger they do not wish to move them. And they do all their works to be seen by men, and they make their tefillin wide and lengthen their tzitzits of their garments. And they love the best places at feasts and the best seats in the congregations and the greetings in the marketplaces and to be called by men Rabbi. But you do not be called Rabbi, for one is your teacher, the Messiah, and you and all your brothers. And do not call anyone on earth your father, for one is your Father, he who is in the heavens. Neither be called leaders, for one is your leader, the Messiah. But the greatest among you shall be your servant. 13 or 11?
Just 12.
Just 12. And whoever exalts himself shall be humble, and whoever humbles himself shall be exalted.
Okay, very good. So, if we look over here at what's going on, it's interesting that when we think about really kind of, chronologically, when Yeshua is having all of these interactions with this one or that one, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, these lawyers and doctors and Herodians and all of these different ones, he has all these interactions all the way to the point where he, last week kind of really shut their mouths. And, when you look at everything, this is kind of one of the last things that goes on with Yeshua in terms of his public discourses. And so here it says, it begins in verse 1 where he's speaking to people. He's speaking to the crowds, not necessarily to the scribes and the Pharisees as per usual, but he's talking about the scribes and the Pharisees to the people. And he kind of does, he does like a sandwich kind of a thing. He's going to talk bad about them. He's going to talk bad about them. It's coming. But he don't start off that way. He starts off good. Right? He starts off good and he says to the people that these scribes and these Pharisees, they sit in the seat of Moses. They sit in the seat of Moses. And so it's interesting, you think about this, first of all, Yeshua, he defeated all of the factions. They came with their questions, they came with their challenges, and as a result of being defeated, they all probably at this point, they go away. But he has something to say about them to the people, and he talks about this idea here of this seat of Moses, the seat of Moses. And so it wasn't like Moses, similar to, we talked about last week, we talked about sitting at the right hand of Yahweh. There's not really a seat, right? There's not really a chair that Moses sat in, right? It's more of an idea of a position of authority. That's the point. It wasn't really a seat that Moses sat in, but it was about a position of authority. And so the scribes and the Pharisees, they were the ones that interpreted and expounded on the Torah. And it just so happens that they did it while sitting. They did do it while sitting. They would read the Torah standing. We see whenever Yeshua goes to the temple, and it says that he stood and read. That's what they did. They would stand and read, but they would sit and expound and do their preaching or what have you, sitting. So there was that idea of sitting, but it wasn't about necessarily a seat that he was talking about. Again, it was about this idea of this place of authority. But it was the custom of the peoples when they went to hear the words of the Most High, they would go and sit somewhere, and the elders and the Torah scholars, they would give their interpretations of the Torah. The Pharisees and the scribes were those ones. Now, it's interesting, the dynamic here, because when you think about Israel as a nation, there was a period, after the original temple was destroyed, and then the people went into bondage, went into Babylon for that time, and then the time after, with no temple, there was these places that would pop up where the people would come together and read, study the Torah. These various places, by the time they get to the time of Yeshua, where in the Greek they call them synagogues. But it's interesting when you look kind of and see that they were various kind of things that assemblies, that's what the word synagogue means, is assembly or place of gathering. But they would have these places called, Beit Knesset or Beit Tefillah or Beit Midrash. And so you have this Beit Midrash house of study. You had Beit Tefillah, house of prayer, and Beit Knesset, house of assembly. And so some of these synagogues would be a place of assembly, a place where you would go where rulings were made. And it's not necessarily how we would think about the thing in terms of like a quote unquote church or religious gathering. A Beit Knesset really could just be like almost like a place where the community comes together and discuss community topics. A Beit Tefillah could have been, and historically would just be solely going to a particular place for prayer, communal prayer. And then also the same thing with the Beit Midrash, a place of study. Now, as time went on, you had these synagogues, is what it's in the Greek, pop up in various places where it might be dedicated to one of those three things, or any combination of the three, or all three. Again, because of not having a temple and the people being spread out, from the time that there was a temple, if you're spread out, you didn't have time, you couldn't go up to the temple. All right, so you lived your life in your satellite place, and you basically congregated with groups of people in these local synagogues. And so in those places, the elders and the Torah scholars, they were the ones they had the authority, and they were teaching they were doing the things that the priests would only do in that temple kind of a lifestyle. In that temple lifestyle, if you wanted to know a thing about the Torah, the priests were the experts on the Torah. But outside of that temple experience, now where the dynamic is changing, it's turning into this other thing where you have these satellite situations where, now it's about these scribes and Pharisees. And so Yeshua is saying to the people, they sit in the seat of Moses, the scribes and the Pharisees. These are the ones who have the authoritative view on what it is that the scripture is saying. And Yeshua is saying, listen to them. Listen to what it is that they have to say. And it's interesting because he's affirming a common understanding and idea that the people had. The rabbis actually demanded at this time unconditional obedience to their teachings, and they base it off of Deuteronomy 17. Let's look at Deuteronomy 17, 8 through 13. They base this idea off of Deuteronomy 17, 8 through 13. And by the way, Yeshua is affirming the general consensus of what was thought of these scribes and Pharisees of the time. Read verses 8 through 13.
Deuteronomy 17 and 8. When a matter arises which is too hard for you to judge, between blood and blood, between plea and plea, or between stroke and stroke, matters of strife within your gates, then you shall rise up and go to the place which Yahweh your Elohim chooses, and shall come to the priests, the Levites, and to judge who it is in those days, and shall inquire, and they shall declare to you the word of right ruling. And you shall do according to the word which they declare for you from that place which Yahweh chooses, and you shall guard to do according to all that they instruct you. Do according to the Torah in which they teach you, according to the right ruling which they say to you. You do not turn to the right or to the left from the word which they declare to you. And the man who acts arrogantly, so as not to listen to the priest who stands to serve there before Yahweh, your Elohim, or to the judge, that man shall die. So you shall purge the evil from Israel, and let all the people hear and fear, and no longer do arrogantly.
Okay, very good. So the basis now of the thought process coming from the synagogues, again, because these are the satellite places away from the temple. And by the way, by the time you get to Yeshua's day, the temple with the Sadducees, the people, they didn't trust them. They didn't trust the priests anymore, because they was in bed with the Romans, and so they didn't trust them. And so when they look at Deuteronomy 17, 8 through 13, they're talking about coming to the priests and the Levites and the judges for judgments concerning the Torah. They can't trust the priests anymore. They essentially have taken the place of the priest in that role where rulings and things is coming through them. And so this is the thought process of the people at the time. They set the quote-unquote religious standards, and the people essentially, are doing the things that, whatever school you're associated with in your town or whatever, they make up the law. And so Yeshua, interestingly enough, is saying to the people, they sit in the seat of Moses. They have the authority like unto what Moses had. As if to say, if a judgment comes down from Moses or someone appointed by Moses, one of the 70 elders, that's what it is. And so Yeshua, again, is affirming that point. And then, again, so we go back to Matthew 23. So he says that, and then he says, therefore, whatever they say, guard it. Guard it and do it. Which is interesting. Because the Pharisees are known for the traditions and things that they've created. They're known for the fences that they've erected in order to prevent people from falling into sin. If Torah helps one to understand what sin is, that's over here. And then what they did is they made a fence that make it so that you can't even get to that part of where sin is if you just stay outside of this fence over here. Like you won't even you can't even see sin. Because we built this fence up where we're going to keep you right. And Yeshua, he don't make a distinction right here. He said whatever they... What's that verse C right there? Let's see verse 3. Yeah, just make that big right there. Verse 3, whatsoever, that's 2 words there. Supposition, with possibility, uncertainty. What, where, whether, whoso. I'm pretty sure there's no magical interpretation for that whatsoever. Right? Whatever they say, guard it and do it. He's making a declaration, and he said what he said, and he meant what he said. And so it's interesting, again, he's about to say some things now. He's about to go in on these people. But he says this first. He says this first. And so, I find this interesting because, there's a lot of things that, it's really it's a point of contention. It's hard to track exactly the course of what we know of as, rabbinic Judaism and the Pharisees at this time. There's various schools of thought. One of which is that the Pharisees really are the predecessors of what we know of as Judaism now. And then there's also other people who say that they weren't. You have both sides. You have to really do some serious research to affirm or deny either one of those ideas. But there's many things that we're able to see that exist even to right now that existed at that time that they participated in and that Yeshua also participated in. One of those things, the Amidah, is something that in the first century, the Amidah now consists of 19 blessings. 19 blessings. 18 of which can be linked all the way back to the time of Yeshua. The one that doesn't go that far back is the one that basically curses the heretics. Which, as to code, I always don't do that one. I always skip that one. But the rest, the other ones that we go through that we've been going through at Sukkot for the last 2 years, are these traditions that can be traced all the way back to the time of Yeshua. Which at that time would have been one of the things that the Yeshua here is saying, whatever it is that they say to you to guard and do. And he never talks against what they say. What he said in verse 3 was, do not according to their works. For they say something that's good. But they don't do it. Which is something that I think that we should pay attention to. Because there's many things that we sit up here and say that, that's what the Pharisees were doing. Yeshua affirms the Pharisees. He talks against the things that they do, not against the things that they say. And he says this again to the people. And so he don't just sit up there and just put them out there like that. He gives a little context. Right? So we read in verse 4. Could you read verse 4 again?
Matthew, right?
Yes, Matthew 23 and 4.
For they bind heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on men's shoulders, but their figure they do not wish to move them.
Now I think this probably is more so kind of expounding on what he already said. They're telling you these things. Do what they say. but they themselves don't do them. And so when he says that they bind heavy burdens, I feel like he's calling them heavy burdens because the Pharisees themselves are treating them as these heavy burdens that they can't bear, but they want you to bear. They put them on men's shoulders, but they don't put them on their own shoulders. Their finger, they do not wish to move the burden. Not as if Yeshua is affirming that the burden is heavy, but I think that what he's saying is in from the perspective of the Pharisee, this thing is this burdensome thing that's hard to bear for them because they're not doing it, but they're putting it on you, the people that he's talking to. It's interesting too, also to think about Yeshua here and when he's saying you and they. Because here in verse 4, they that he's talking about is the Pharisees. But the Pharisees are not openly present. Here he's talking to the crowds. And so he continues and talks about these. Now this is another interesting thing here. When we look at verse 5, and it talks about the phylacteries and the tzitzit on their garments. The scriptures version says tefillin, which is the container that was made, that the certain laws was placed in, and you put it on you. Tefillin is prayer, tefillah. The tefillin is the thing that you put on you for prayer, which was essentially a mezuzah for your body. And so these people, he's talking to the people in regards to the Pharisees, not that they did this, but the fact that they made their tefillin wide, big. They made their tzitzits long. You know, I have to shake my head at myself. Because somebody said something about my true bruise that I had on the other week. And then I looked in the picture, like, man, them things today is kind of long. It probably go down all the way to my knees, I think. You know, but at this point, it's like they have sentimental value. You know what I mean? They can't be replaced. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I wasn't like, make me some the longest that you could make. You know what I mean? It just...
Well, he did make, you can request, but standard, that was the size.
Yeah, and then I didn't get custom ones. He made those, and then he was like, you want these or these? I was like, oh, let me get these ones.
Yeah.
But it's like when you see them in the picture, long. I see what you mean. They is kind of long. And I just want to say, just for the record, I'm not trying to make them be that long.
Right. It's just how they came.
That's how I bought them at the store. Like, maybe I should have seen them and seen how long they was, and like, man, I don't want them. They too long. I don't know.
That's funny.
But the Pharisees, Yeshua's bringing out that they did these things to be seen of people. Making sure that they was extra long, extra big, they're tefillin. And they loved the best places at the feast and the best seats in the congregation. It's interesting that it really was. If we don't look at the history of these things and the way that these people behaved, it's like you miss an extra layer of this. Because you could think about, they said the best seat. So, you think about what's the best seat in the house. I want to go and sit in that seat. But in these places, in these synagogues, in these gatherings, in these feast gatherings that people would have, there really was a pecking order in terms of the seating arrangements. And mostly it was like the eldest had the best seats. Or the most scholarly would trump sometimes the eldest. So if you was more scholarly, you could have the best seat. And then like the next best, it would go down from there. But this was an understanding that people had. And so maybe it was a thing where I feel like I'm scholarly and then somebody else feel like they're scholarly and then they trying to figure out amongst themselves who's going to sit in the seat. Because there was a seat. There was an area where these elders and these scholars, quote unquote, would be. And it kind of was like an spoken kind of a thing where there was like this thing that he's describing, the best places, is there was a place. But Yeshua's saying they're sitting up here fighting amongst themselves about this or that. But meanwhile, what about the more important issues? At the end of the day, these people really are wanting honor placed on them, but it's kind of self-imposed.
I think about like I don't want to criticize any, because I feel like there's a place for traditions and people's traditions. So I don't want to criticize, I don't want to come off as critical, but I just think about like in different churches, they come in, they got their garment on. I mean, you have garment, we all have garments. So I'm not trying to, but I'm saying, they come in every week with their garments. And there's the seats on the stage or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, where the people, the bishops and the apostles and I don't know, where they sit. You know what I mean? It's kind of what I would imagine today's situation.
Yes, I mean it's not different; it's the same. And from all the way back in Yeshua's time, you have the situation where you have these people who love, he said they love the best places and the best seats in the congregation. They love for people to call out to them from across the street, Rabbi, Rabbi, in the marketplace. Right? Because this is more than just the idea of, he talks about the idea next, but the first thing is in the marketplace for people just to come up to you or see you out in the streets and call out your prestigious name, Rabbi. Because Rabbi is really a prestigious title. We don't think about it. It's the scripture helps us to know that it literally means my great one. It don't mean teacher. So somebody was really arguing with me about this. Not like I'm not someone who could be argued with. Because I am. I don't know everything. I've been wrong so many times. But on this, I'm not. It don't mean teacher. It literally means great or high exalted one. And so people called their teacher great high exalted one. Not that it literally meant teacher, but they called their teacher that. There was such a great reverence for their teacher in the culture That's what they call themselves. And so, again, when somebody in the marketplace, they're literally saying, high exalted one, high exalted one. In the marketplace, it could be a thing. Especially if this is a thing that Yeshua is saying that you love this. You love that. You love these places to sit, and you love these greetings that you get when you're out in public. Yeshua says a lot of things here that I think are interesting and can be confusing. This next part is one of those things. Read verse 8 again for us.
But you do not be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, the Messiah, and you are your all brothers.
Okay, very good. So, that same person that was arguing with me about rabbi meaning teacher also was arguing with me about titles in general based on this verse. I think it's important to understand, first of all, what the word means, which helps you to understand why Yeshua will bring up this idea of people not wanting for this thing, desiring, coveting this title here. Because I think that really is the point. People seeking honor, seeking these titles of honor and praise and position. I think that is the point. It's one thing to go to a place and sit wherever you sit, and then somebody says, why don't you sit here in this good place? That's not the same as me trying to hurry up and get to the good place. If I sit wherever I sit at, and then somebody says, oh, let's just sit in the good place. Do I say, no, I don't want to sit in the good place? I don't think that's the idea. I think the idea is that they love the best places, and so they seek out those places to sit. They love to be honored by people, and so they covet positions and titles because they want to be honored by people. What you trying to say?
I just had a scripture. If I can read. It's Luke 14:8 about the wedding, the seats. Want me to read it?
Oh, we'll put it up.
Pull it up. It says
14.
8 through maybe 11. I mean, you can go all the way to 18, but the point, what we're talking about is to 11.
11.
When you are invited by anyone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in the best place. At least one more distinguished than you be invited by him, and he who invited you and him come and say to you, give this one place. Then you begin with shame to take the last place. Rather, when you are invited, go and sit down in the last place, so that when he who invited you comes, he shall say to you, friend, come higher up. Then you shall have esteem in the presence of those who sit at the table with you. For everyone who is exalting himself shall be humbled, and he who is humbling himself shall be exalted.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes, very good. So when you look at both of these things, you look at here what is being said over here, it's kind of, agreeing with the idea that I'm saying over here. It's not about sitting in the places. It's about having this desire to be in these places and kind of moving outside of humility. But verse 8 is something that people now people really would say that people shouldn't be rabbis, shouldn't take this name because Yeshua said, "Don't be called it. For one is your teacher, the Messiah, and you're all brothers. Everybody's the same."
You also heard that too. Everybody's the same.
I did, yeah, I've heard it all.
Everybody's the same. It's like,
Yep.
not everybody's the same.
I mean, everybody isn't the same. It's just, it's not a free fall, a free for all. Go to 1 Timothy 3 and verse 1.
1 Timothy 3 and 1, trustworthy is the word. If a man longs for the position of an overseer, he desires a good work.
Okay, Paul said if somebody longs for the position, desires. What do King James say right there? Desire. What's that word? Desire mean? Origami. That's interesting. Oh, to stretch oneself. That's interesting. I never knew that word was Greek. I thought it was like Japanese or something. It sounds the same.
I don't like. Which one is this here? What word is this? No, wait, what word?
Oh, desire.
Okay.
Desire. To stretch oneself, to reach out after, long covet after desire. And so if somebody longs for a position of
I
overseer,
don't like that. I don't like that.
overseer,
I don't like that.
overseer, or bishop,
Yeah, that's a good word. Well, I mean,
he don't say don't try to be it. He starts to give you characteristics that you should have in order to fit the criteria.
yeah.
The apostle of Yeshua,
Man,
the one who go out and said what Yeshua said to say. And so I think that when we go back to Matthew, Yeshua is not talking about titles necessarily. He's talking about people wanting honor and desiring to have people treat them in a particular way. And be kind of self-appointed. He said, he says it down. Read back in Matthew 23 verse 12. It says the same thing we just read in Luke.
And whoever exalts himself shall be humbled, and whoever humbles himself shall be exalted.
So I think it's about the motivation more so than the actual thing, because when you look at verse 9, it's very interesting. It's very interesting in verse 9. Can you read verse 9 again?
And do not call anyone on earth your father, for one is your father, he who is in the heavens.
So you can't call your daddy father? What's he saying right there? Is that what he's saying? Certainly he can't mean the way that you talk about your daddy. Your actual daddy. Don't call him father because you have one father in heaven. Because that's what he literally says right there, right? He literally says that. Don't call anyone, by the way, is not there. Anyways, italicized. So in the text, it don't say anyone.
So the Catholics don't got this in their Bible.
They
Must have took this out.
They do have it in their Bible, but I'm saying that I don't know if it's literal though, because you have an actual father. You have an actual father. And it say, and call no your father. No one man's implied upon the earth. But again, when you look into kind of the customs that these people did, you know, just like they're calling their teacher rabbi, they're also calling their teacher father. They're also calling, you know, it goes for men and women. They're calling women Iman, Allah, to these people in the context of, you know, people being their teachers. And so I think the context still goes along with the people on the receiving end of these titles or positions, the idea of somebody desiring the praise, the honor that goes along with these things, as opposed to the actual thing. Paul talked about his disciples as his son. So if he's calling Timothy his son, by virtue, he's saying that he's his father. And so either he's in violation in doing that, or this is not, we had to figure out what it is Yeshua is saying over here.
I mean, you know, I think about it's not so cut and dry. It's like just people, they get it, and then it's just like a borderline, and it just becomes so rigid that it doesn't make any sense. And I can see that within our communities, because people would much rather, like if there's an older woman, they'll call her an imam of the group. But then when you have someone who's an elder of a group, they're kind of stingy with that elder type of word. But if it's an imam so-and-so, imam so-and-so, and then those same people want to just be kind of like iffy when it comes to like actual titles within the body of the side. You know what I mean? And so I always call upon that just from a feminine standpoint, you know, whenever I'm talking about things, because for me, you know, I don't see myself as being an imam until I don't even know what age. It's just not right now. You know what I mean? But
You're pretty close. You're getting old.
Okay.
You're getting up there now.
But I'm just saying that, you know, you just see it within our circles, because every, like, you know, an older woman could easily be called an imam, but it's like the man on the male side, it's like they're stingy with the different types. It's just something that I've observed.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the culture that we live in, where, you know, the man's kind of like not really given his due. There's a lot of man hating that goes on. It's a cultural thing that we experience.
Yep.
You know, but
I'm just saying, there's a mother, but then that's...
Yeah, they might go back to this and say, call no man your daddy, so I'm not going to give no man honor.
Yeah. Don't honor the mother.
But I think to rightly understand what's going on is that somebody wanting the honor, right? Let somebody give you the honor instead of demanding the honor on yourself.
I think that's where men are different to her point. I don't want some young kid coming up to me telling me he knows me.
I mean, in most cases, he probably doesn't. You know what I mean?
And in some cases they do, but let me give you that.
Yeah, in most cases. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's where men differ.
Men are much more confrontational abrupt about things. It is a manly kind of a thing. You know what I mean? And then as soon as a young man becomes old, he knows everything. So it's easy for us to kind of show our, we're animals. That's what animals do. You see it out in nature, and it happens with humans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As soon as you get some knowledge, you have all knowledge. That's just what we do. And so these people, at the end of the day, are still people, and they're just behaving like people. And Yeshua's saying, these people got problems, and these are the problems. Yeshua, he's the perfect example. Yeshua is who he is, and he's coming as a servant to the people. Meanwhile, he is who he is. He lets, for the most part, he lets the people say who he is. And then he does the things that prove who he is. And sometimes he'll say, I just want to say, when he gets to the part about, like last week, he was signifying, but he was telling the people who he was and that he actually sits on the right hand of the Most High. But he signified it. He didn't come right out and say it. He was signifying, right? But for the most part, he lets the people say who he is. I mean, he asked Peter, who do people say that I am? But he there was a specific answer that you said right whenever he said you said that right. You got the right answer. But in men, and specifically in these Pharisees and Sadducees, he's pointing out that these people, they're kind of these people that want this position and honor, and he's saying, this is no good. And so he goes into speaking now to the Pharisees and the scribes, who either came back at some point or were kind of in the background previously, because now he goes from talking to the people and the crowds, and now he's going to begin to talk to the scribes and the Pharisees. So he's not talking about them anymore. Now he's talking to them. So let's look at verse 13. Just read verse 13.
But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut up the rain of the heavens before men, for you do not go in, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in.
Okay, very good. He said, "Woe to you." Woe. Here, let's look at that word there, woe. Whoa. That says uwai. Uwai. Go to the word study on that. That's an interesting word. And actually, if we go down, maybe a little bit halfway down on that, right there, it is a onomatopoeia. It's an imitation of a sound. Onomatopoeia, like the old Batman show. They're like boom, bam, wham. Like those are onomatopoeias. They're words that exist that emulate the sound that it makes, like Nakash. Nakash, the serpent, right? Nakash is an onomatopoeia, but so is this. In the Greek is woe, but Hebrew it's the same. Go over to let's see. Go over to Isaiah 5:20.
Isaiah 5:20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter.
Okay, look at that word there. Whoa.
This one,
Yeah. Oh. You know, that's just hope. That's just hope. The yod is silent right
What's that? Oh. Oh, you mean the whoa.
there. What is that? Isaiah 5.
What makes it the yod makes
I think it's silent.
the boy.
You saying that, but I hear what you're saying, but I think that my teacher would say that yod is silent. It don't have no vowel mark. The Bob does.
Shola said like oy vey. Well, I think oy and
It's the same. Both are in fact onomatopoeias. I'm just saying what I believe in my novice
you're not.
Hebrew knowledge. I just want to look in the. Oh yeah, it's the same way here.
Did you want to pull it up on the right?
It's exactly the same. It's just like that. There's no vowel marking on the yod. It's insignificant. The point is that it's a noise that you're making
Oy.
to signify a thing, right? So whether you're saying ho or oi, it's this noise of disdain that you're making. Almost as if it's the pronouncement of a foul, cursed thing. And so when Yeshua is saying to the Pharisees and the scribes, when he's saying woe to you, he's making this sound, he's declaring this noise of this disdain and disgrace towards the scribes and the Pharisees. And then he puts some actual words with it. Hypocrites. Hypocrites. A hypocrite is like a stage player. He's an actor. He's doing these things, but it's not really him. Right? He's a pretender. He's a counterfeit. A man who assumes and speaks or acts under a feigned character. He's pretending. He said, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees. You are pretenders. Because you shut up the kingdom of heavens before men, for you do not, but you don't even go in. So you shut the door for people to go into the kingdom, but you can't come in. But you don't allow others to go in either. Now he's specifically talking about the kingdom that Yeshua is pronouncing. Because in their eyes, they present the proper way to the world to come. But Yeshua is referring to the kingdom that he is proclaiming, and they are shutting the door and also not allowing for others to come in as well. Let's see, read 14.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you eat up the widows' houses, and for a show make long prayers, because this you shall receive greater judgment.
Okay, so in their keeping of the law, in their strictness of the letter of the law, they're wanting for this one or that one to bring their things that they're supposed to bring. But in regards to the widows is actually people who's supposed to be receiving. So they're supposed to be receivers, and then the scribes and the Pharisees are causing for them to be the givers, eating up the widows' houses. And so they're having this this show of this lack of compassion that they're having in order for people to be doing what the law might say. And at the same time, it talks about this idea of having these prayers, these long prayers, wanting for people again to honor them. Oh, this person is so eloquent. He's so good at their, because quote unquote religious things. These people, they spoke Aramaic. Aramaic was what they spoke. But just reading scriptures, saying prayers, these things are kind of would have been spoken in Hebrew. Oh, this person's Hebrew is so excellent. They maybe wanted someone to say.
I remember, I'll never forget, we went to a Messianic assembly, and they did the whole procession of the Torah, and then the rabbi gets up and he's reading his Hebrew, and I'm like, I could read that better than him.
That's crazy.
But
You said that?
to my soul.
I probably heard you say it.
But I'm saying the thought process behind being really eloquent in your
Yes.
reading of the Hebrew and of the Torah.
It was a very, from a cultural standpoint, it was a very important thing for you to read the Torah and to read it perfectly.
and have the eloquence behind it.
It's so interesting in this Hebrew class. It don't matter how good you read it, not like I read it good whenever I go through it, but the teacher must say it again, and he says it so just perfectly with all of this, all of the intonations and all of this,
Yeah.
because that's a thing to say that language, to say every word perfectly. And so, but there's a thing behind that. If I'm saying it perfectly, it's because, and when I do that, I get these accolades and honor and people patting me on the back for doing so. And none of that. There's not humility in any of that. And so this is what he's saying. You know what I mean? This is what Yeshua is talking about in regards to the Pharisees. They're hypocrites. They're supposed to be the ones who are teaching the people the ways, but in fact what they're doing is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
What they're doing. They're saying one thing, they're doing another. Verse 15.
It says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, because you go about the land and the sea to win one convert, And when he is one, you make him a son of Gehenna twofold more than yourselves.
Okay, very good. When you think about this, because the Pharisees and the convert that the Pharisees or the scribes will be making will be duplicates of themselves. And so them in their hypocritical ways are only going to create greater hypocrites. That's literally what he said. They're going to make a hypocrite greater than themselves. They're gonna create this perfect student that they're gonna build up who's gonna be better than them. But the better, in this case, is actually worse. Look at 16 through 22.
Woe to you, blind guys who say, whoever swears by the dwelling place, it does not matter. But whoever swears by the gold of the dwelling place is bound by oath. Fools and blind, for which is greater, the gold or the dwelling place that sets the gold apart? And whoever swears by the slaughtered place, it does not matter. But whoever swears by the gift that is on it is bound by oaths. Fools and blind, for which is greater, the gift or the slaughtered place that sets the gift apart? He then who swears by the slaughtered place swears by it and by all that is upon it. And he who swears by the dwelling place swears by it and by him who is dwelling in it. And he who swears by the heavens swears by the throne of Elohim and by him who is sitting upon it.
Okay, very good. So it's interesting when you think about, first of all, what Yeshua is talking about here again. The subtext, the thing that is not being said is the fact that these people really, they had these vow formulas where
Bio?
vow,
D-I?
vow, like making an oath, a vow.
B-O-W.
Yes, formula.
Oh, swear.
Where you, like, there was levels to your vowing, where one thing may be more important, binding than another. Yeshua says that's folly. Fools, you're blind. They're gonna sit up here and talk about the gold at the temple. Is it the temple more important or the gold that is built with? Which one? You can't have one without the other. One is not less of a vow than the other. All of this stuff is folly, right? But the idea is that, Yeshua talks about making vows. He said, just don't even make no vow. Just say what you want to say. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything above that is sin. You can't change nothing. You don't know how many hairs is on your head. So how you going to make a vow on it? And so, but these people, they had these various formulas where you could also get out of a vow because you didn't say what you were supposed to say right. But again, Yeshua is putting these scribes and these Pharisees and all these things that they're actually doing, putting them in the category of hypocrites because they're living this life doing these things that is non-congruent with the actual position that they're in and the overall thing that they're supposed to be doing, which is bringing an understanding to the words of the Most High. 23 and 24.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you tithe the mint of the anise, and the cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the Torah, the right ruling, and the compassion, and the belief. These need have been done without neglecting the others. Blind guides, staining out the gnat, and swallowing a camel.
He said, you sitting up here talking about tithing these smallest of things, mint and anise and cumin, and neglecting compassion and faith and right ruling and judgment. Do both. Do both of the things. He's not saying do one and not the other. He's saying you do both of the things. Don't sit up here and talk to me about me tithing my tea leaves, and then meanwhile you're not able to understand compassion and true faith and rightness. You trying to strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. That sounds crazy. But the idea is that you put in all of this emphasis on this small thing, but yet you not thinking about this large thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you putting so much emphasis on this thing that really is trivial and almost insignificant. But this other thing that's going on that you're not paying no attention to.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we kind of sometimes might do some stuff like this.
All the time, every day.
You sitting up there worrying about this little thing. Meanwhile, you got these people out here just doing all kinds of wicked stuff
Mm-hmm.
that ain't nobody talking about.
Yeah. And I look at it like people thinking they gonna vote the problems away. Yeah, you gonna vote this stuff away. Nah, you gotta change. The people gotta change.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the thing is in reverse. Like when we look at these laws, statutes, and commands, we have to understand that these are the things that help us to understand what the character of the Most High is. And so we're going to look at that thing that's giving us this picture, that's helping us to understand the characteristic that he has, but then we won't operate in that characteristic, but we want you to do the thing that exemplifies the characteristic.
Mm-hmm.
Here he's talking about this idea of tithing everything. And let everything be given your first of it to the Most High. But you don't care about compassion. He talked about the widow. Like you gonna sit up here and tax the widow so much so that she can't even take care of her own property, instead of having compassion for the person who's not able to do for her own self. Don't have somebody to help and do things for her anymore. And so you putting so much emphasis on the one part without the emphasis on the greater part.
And I think about, even talking about tithe as, none of us are probably, I don't want to say us, but, a lot of people are in a position where in the land they would receive because they aren't, you know what I mean? Like if you look at it, there was a tithe for the poor. And so it's like, we live in this society right now where, especially single income, households, where people literally in this society are barely making enough to survive in America in year 2025 or whatever year it is. Someone's listening to this later. And so it's like, it's like, now if you want to say, okay, everything you got to give 10%, well, where is the understanding in that where people aren't even able to make it with the capitalistic wages that are handed out? Because the wage is set so that you can barely survive in America. Barely.
Yeah, it's interesting that we don't really think about that. You know, if there was a portion that the widows and the poor received, I feel like that means that they was receivers and not givers. But meanwhile, you got these people that, you know, are demanding from people who really are poor when they're supposed to be receivers and not givers. And I think that's part of this part that the Yeshua was talking about in terms of, you know, these things. Like, in all of these things that we do, there has to be right ruling. There has to be compassion. There has to be an understanding of people and their needs. You know, everybody isn't the same. All right, let's keep on going. Let's go. I want to go down to read 27 through 32.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly indeed look well, but inside are filled with dead men's bones and all uncleanliness. So you too outwardly indeed appear righteous to men, but inside you are filled with hypocrisy and lawlessness. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, and say, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have taken part with them in the blood of the prophets. Thus you bear witness against yourselves that you are the sons of those who did murder the prophets, and you filled up the measure of your fathers.
It's interesting what Yeshua is doing over here, because when I was looking into this, it really was a thing for them to literally whitewash tombs with lime, and to clean these tombs and markers for the purposes of seeing where they were, so that they didn't defile themselves. So you didn't like inadvertently stroll onto somebody's death marker. And so they literally would have these things be shiny, for cleanliness purposes, right? To not become unclean. And so Yeshua, when he describes the scribes and Pharisees as that thing, it's kind of funny, because he's describing this thing which sounds crazy, but they literally did that. They didn't do it. They commissioned it to be done. They couldn't do it. Right? They commissioned it to be done, but he's literally describing them as the thing. As this shiny tomb with nothing but dead bones inside. This thing that looks good on the outside, it's amazing, it's immaculate. But on the inside is dead. And also this other part with the prophets' tombs would have been in the same category. But the idea, I've done this before. I've looked back at Israel in the wilderness and said to myself, I would never be like those people. Because I can't really picture how I would be like those people. But outside of, experiencing it, I can't really say what I would do. I would know what the right thing to do would be. But I can't say that I would be any different than those people, given the situation. You are what your life experience makes you to be. Those people's life experience was Egypt. They didn't know anything better. This was a new thing that they was experiencing. We could sit up here and say, well, they heard the Most High's voice from the mountain. They sat up there and seen the thunderings and lightnings. They should have been perfect after that. You can say it easily, it makes sense, but let's see you in that situation and see where you end up. You can't, it's impossible, but you know what I mean. You know what the right answer is because you on the other side.
Yeah.
Put yourself in that situation. Can you make the right decision? Hindsight is perfect. It's 2020.
Depend on the I mean, if you got the same spirit, I say you could.
I'm just saying the statistics.
Well, now that's the thing.
statistics,
Who got the right spirit?
There's only 2 of them that did.
Right. What proof?
Out of 600,000.
I'd be one of them.
Okay.
Hold on. What was we just reading? Was that Numbers? What did we?
Yeah, Numbers.
Let me read.
12, 11. Was it 12 or 11?
It was 11. Was the,
11. Yeah.
the fish.
Let me read this one verse in 11.
I want to make some fish with leeks and cucumbers and melons.
I don't know about the
I want to
melons.
see what it tastes like.
I don't know about the sweet. The sweetness that throws it off.
Now, 16, Numbers 11:16. Let me read 16 and 17. It says, "Then Yahweh said to Moshe, gather me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be elders of the people and officers over them, and bring them to the tent of appointment, and let them stand with you." 17, and I shall come down and speak with you there, and shall take the spirit that is on you and put on them.
So,
You know what I'm saying? So they can take the burden. So clearly Moses had a spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So as long if you got your same spirit, I feel like you should be able to.
Yeah.
Because the spirit is going to lead you to do the right thing or make the right decision. So he had to take the spirit that was on Moses and put it on them so they can operate how he was operating.
Moses, he was about to lose it. Like Moses knew that he wasn't able to bear all these people complaining.
all the time.
And so you need somebody to take some of this and help you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And I'm just saying that in spite of the fact that this happened, all 70 of those people died out there. You know what I mean? and so what you're saying is true. It takes that. It takes that spirit, but you got to walk in that spirit too, though.
Right.
And so I'm just saying.
I believe I would have made it.
Of course. But Yeshua over here, he's talking about these people who,
Yeah.
while they're looking backwards and talking about what the people did to the prophets, they are doing the exact same thing because they are wanting the head of Yeshua.
They're about to kill him.
So they want to sit up there and talk about what the people did to their prophets. Meanwhile, they about to do something to the prophet, Yeshua.
The main one.
Okay, let's oh, we're almost finished. Read down to the bottom. Read 33 to the bottom. 39.
Serpents, blood of adders. How would you escape the judgment of Gehenna? Because of this, see, I send you prophets and wise men and scholars of Scripture. Some of them you shall kill and impale, and some of them you shall flog in your congregations and persecute from city to city, so that on you shall come all the righteous blood shed of the earth, from the blood of the righteous Hebel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the dwelling place and the slaughter place. Truly I say to you, all this shall come upon this generation. Yabushaim, killing the prophets and stoning those who are sent to her. How often I wished to gather your children together, the way a hen gathers her chickens under her wings, but you would not. See, your house is left to you laid waste. For I say to you, from now on, you shall by no means see me until you say, blessed is he who is coming in the name of Yahweh.
Okay, very good. So we see that kind of Yeshua kind of leaves these people with kind of this proclamation, this declaration about the behavior of the Pharisees, how they act towards him. Again, he's the one that that they want to persecute. He's the one that they want to kill and impale. And as a result of it, it's very interesting. This thing needs to happen. This thing is, in fact, the will of the Most High. However, the people that are doing it, even though they're executing the plan of the Most High, the thing that they're doing is bad. It's so interesting. Like, the thing needs to happen. Like, he has to go and he has to die. He has to die in a terrible way. He has to be betrayed. All of these things have to happen. And it's the plan of the Father for the things to happen. But at the same time, the people that do it, it's a problem. Because if they're operating out of wickedness, even though the result is our salvation. It's so interesting, when you think about kind of what's happening. Like, they don't, as a whole, they don't make this proclamation here in regards to Yeshua. To them, he's not coming in the name of Yahweh. To them, he's a heretic. And they really are going to be judged as a result. But at the same time, the thing that they're doing is an absolute necessary component in the overall scheme of things. It's like we need to have we need to have the bad guy in the story. the bad guy's part of the story. You know what I mean? He's a necessary component in all of this. You know, there's got to be a Satan. There's got to be a Pharaoh. There's got to be a Judas. There's got to be these wicked leaders. They're all necessary components, and they're all operating out of the convictions of their own heart. They want to do it. But it's a necessary thing. Like they need to have these hypocrites be in power and in control of things for this plan to be followed through. Like that's how it happens. But it's so interesting when you look at it to see, you know, again, we look at these Pharisees, these scribes and Pharisees, you know, when Yeshua, the way he talks to them, when he says the things like, you know, if you read Moses, you read it me. These people who were the experts in the law, you would think there's so much experts, they should have been able to identify him and who he was, but they wasn't, because there was a ingredient that was missing, you know, that spirit. And so I think when we think about all of this, you know, kind of like unto what we kind of talked about last week, is that, you know, it's necessary to have a knowledge of the scriptures, but it's even more necessary to have the Spirit with the knowledge of the scriptures. They had one, they didn't have the other. All right, does anybody have any last questions, comments?
Yeah, sure. She had wrote in there that, you know, kind of going back to that, the father thing, and all the titles, that there's no direct comparison to those things in Mark and Luke. They kind of just.
Mark and Luke is very abbreviated. It's that when they get it's literally 3 verses in each, where he really just goes through the main idea of what it is he's trying to say without all the build up. You know, it's really like cliff notes of the account, where it don't even touch on it. Mark and Luke, yeah. That's why we didn't even look at it, because they kind of mirror one another, and it's really just, you know, the overall idea that was made in Matthew, where Matthew's really in depth in the situation here.
And you know, I think just kind of even going back to that, you know, just kind of doubling down on the fact that Yeshua isn't talking against titles. You know, even we read it in the Exodus, Zakenim, there was elders, you know, the 5-foot ministry. There's positions, there are leaders, and that, you know, you can't take these verses here out of context to say there's no such thing as a leader, there's no such thing as order in the household of faith, which is pretty much what people a lot of times try to deal with.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You know, the thing is that, you know, in general, you can never do that. You can never take a verse and that be your whole thing. Because you really could look at that verse and say what it says and then build your whole whatever around it. the problem is that out of context, it don't really match up. You know, like when you look at Acts with what the apostles were doing with kind of their version, I would say, of synagogues being built. You know, they appointed elders. They appointed elders in these places to kind of be over these various places. When you look at the majority of the New Testament, it's letters to the not just only the churches in general, but to the elders, the leadership in the churches about situations that's going on. And so the idea is just, it's prevalent. It is a thing. I'm not trying to act like it's not a thing, but it's just not based on the Bible. Right? Unfortunately, it's just one of those things. You know, it's a huge misunderstanding. People think, oh, you know, well, you know, I have the Spirit. I don't need a man to teach me. That's what it says. I don't need a man to teach me because I have the Spirit. Because it says that in New Covenant, in Jeremiah. But then after that happened, you know, Paul, that's all he did was teach people. You know what I mean? The apostles, that's all they did. You know what I mean? It's just people don't, you know, when people want to do something or don't want to do something, they find a reason to be able to do that something. So if I don't want if I don't want to be held accountable to anyone, I don't want to have to answer any questions. You know, I could just live my life and do whatever I want, and I don't have to listen to you. I can figure it out, you know, myself, because I have the Holy Spirit. That's just not the setup that we see. We don't see no examples of that in the Scripture. All right, so that being said, I think we'll be done for now. Y'all willing, we'll be back on next Shabbat to continue with not only the weekly Torah portion, but the words of the Master. But for now, we'll say Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. While